Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of TJ Plays with some AI stuff, the sick edition. Sorry if I sound a little bit like Kermit the Frog, but I'm having some sinus stuff going on, so please bear with me. But I wanted to resurrect an oldie but goodie, and since the Figma rollout of the check designs feature hasn't quite gotten there yet, I figured FigmaLint is still relevant, and I know a lot of people still use it to this day, and I wanted to make sure that I addressed some of the most common feature requests that I've been getting. So FigmaLint has gotten a little bit of a facelift, and I'll show you more of that once the analysis runs. But I do wanted to call attention to now you can actually use more than just Claude. So I know a lot of organizations have specific restrictions based on their AI providers. So now you can use Claude as always, but now you can use OpenAI and Gemini models as well. And then once you switch to one of those, it's the same process. You enter your API key, and then you get to choose from the top 3 models from each one of those language model providers. So that's great. Use it. I've tested it with all of the models. The response sometimes is a little faster depending on which ones you use. Sometimes the recommendations and suggestions that you get back are a little bit different, but it's a fun way to experiment with what actually these different language model providers provide in terms of recommendations and suggestions for some of these components that you're running the analysis on. And then what that basically means is that when you're using the chat interface, you're using the design systems assistant to run through. That's what the MCP is going to be using. So if it's Gemini, then there'll be a chat with Gemini language model. So wanted to just address that quickly. And for any new people here, FigmaLint is basically a way to lint. Ooh, I need to save this first. Sorry. So that's the one that I already have in there. Oh, let me enter my API here. I guess you get to see exactly how this is all done. So you won't see my API key, but I'm going to use an OpenAI one for this. So I'm going to go here, enter API key. I'm going to go at 5.2, and then I'm going to save that key. I'm going to go ahead and run this analysis while I'm talking. For those of you who are new to FigmaLint, FigmaLint is basically a way for designers to do a little bit of linting on their components before they're sent off for development or before they use any AI services to transition designs into code. It checks for all of the traditional design systems component specs that need to be available or should be available for any well-built comprehensive component. It checks against another MCP that we built called the Design Systems Assistant to ensure that it's abiding by best practices. And it goes through and it checks all these different categories. It does a complete component audit, looks for interactive states, design token usage, component readiness, checks for accessibility scoring, which is a new, more enhanced feature for this latest update. It checks the property cheat sheet, so it goes through all the ones that it sees there and talks about what AI would be seeing if MCPs or AI were connected to this to make this transition into code. It also offers recommendations, which I think is great, which I think these are good recommendations. We don't have a size variant on our buttons here for this design system. This is Altitude design system, our internal design system. A width for full width buttons. I think that's a great option to have there too. Also a loading option. So these are all recommendations that it's pulling from the Design Systems Assistant MCP that these reports get run through before they're displayed here. So all great stuff. These are things that we want to consider as a product designer and have that communication with your development team to see whether or not that's something that they'd be able to leverage or something that's useful for them. This one I think is one of the greatest ones, is this token analysis. So it's going to examine all your tokens, it's going to examine all of your variants, and then it's going to look for any hard-coded values that could be aligned with tokens. And then one of the newest and coolest features is that once it finds it, it'll find it in all of the different variants, and you have the ability to fix them individually, or you can fix them all. So it's going to say 5 items, 4 pixels, found 5 nodes, and you apply that fix. And then when you rerun this analysis, it'll go through that, and then it'll ensure that that fix has been applied to all of the variants that has found within that component set without you having to manually go in there and do it yourself. Another thing that it didn't show was that if you clicked on the little yellow area that flagged it as a hard-coded value, it'll actually bring you to that variant and show you in the properties panel where the hard-coded value is. So as you can see, that was the biggest thing that was being flagged in the component audit, and now we've got a score of 100, which means that this component set is ready for development. It's got everything that it needs. It's got a component description that's outlined here. It's got property description. It's got full accessibility, all of these. It's not going to ding you for these recommended properties because these are suggestions or recommendations. It's not mandated that these are a part of these buttons. Token analysis, we've got total items 28, design tokens 28, beautiful. And then as we go further down here, it does this AI interpolation. So interpretation, this is basically what it's going to say. If it's, since this is 100, you're not getting anything like in red or yellow or orange zones here, meaning like AI has the risk to derail if it found these things. Right now, you're getting it in green, saying that AI, what would AI generate? AI would generate a fully optimized for AI code generation. All tokens, properties, states, and structure provide clear guidance for accurate implementation. This is one where the product design team feels like this is sign off basically for the development team to inherit these designs and then use something like Figma official MCP or our Figma console MCP to be able to effectively move this context into AI to allow AI to produce the highest fidelity version of this in a code base, taking into account all of the tokens and aesthetic and layout parts of the design, but in also taking into consideration all of the purpose and intent. So this is a piece that is important because we always have these like areas in our documentation, which is a description where we store the documentation for things like purpose, behavior, and intent. Which we think is very important for AI to understand the interaction and functionality of these components. So I can get into that more later. So here's a component metadata part. It actually gives you, this is a new feature of this latest update too. It gives you the ability to compare your existing documentation that you may have handwritten or dictated into this description field with what it thinks it should be. And the documentation that it thinks that it should be is based off a couple of things. It bases it off the Design Systems Assistant MCP for best practices for a recognizable component, such as a button, very common. And then it bases it off of what it sees in your metadata panel. So it'll look at the properties and the values. It'll combine that and say, okay, this is how I feel as though you should rewrite this documentation. Then you can compare and update. And when you click this, it'll give you this little screen that says, apply this fix. When you apply the fix, it updates it. And then you'll see that latest update in here. And we've gone through a lot of iterations of this and feel really confident about the types of descriptions that it populates this area with. And then the last piece is this developer handoff. If you don't use any MCP connections to Figma, to your code base, you always have the ability to download this entire, you can see this entire output, including the documentation, all of the specs, all of the considerations, all of the tokens as Markdown or JSON. So that way you can carry that file or store it in zero height and then allow developers to manually input those into your systems. Because I know a lot of organizations can't just like right off the bat install MCPs because there's processes and approvals that it needs to go through. But this is a great way for you to still get that context applied to a code base in the same format that AI would be pulling programmatically from Figma. And then the last part is this chat. So it has full contextual awareness of the button component that we just ran the analysis on. So you can ask it whatever you want. It'll give you back. You can ask it general stuff, just talking about design systems in general, or you can ask it specific stuff that's contextualized to the component that we just ran that analysis on. So this does take a little bit of time sometimes, also depending on the language model that you choose, but it is doing the analysis through the Design Systems Assistant MCP, which usually returns a fairly lengthy response. So you can go through this, and then basically it's outlining the things that it recommended, saying that like you should probably have an icon only version of this and things like that. So you can kind of go back and forth. This is a very lengthy response, but it's chat. So you can keep going back and forth with it and just kind of refine the output here. So anyway, I know the check designs feature isn't fully available in Figma yet for the native version of what they're doing that's similar to FigmaLint, but this version of FigmaLint is available right now. I'll post the link to the community plugin main page, and I'll post the link to the repository too if you want to fork the repository and make a version of this for yourself. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be back with more soon. Thanks.